operation, that CEO resigned after less than a year. The next CEO does another 180-degree. Appendix 8.a. Doom loop behavior in the comparison companies. Direct comparisons. A&P. A&P vacillated, shifting from one strategy to another, always looking for a single stroke to quickly solve its problems. Held pep rallies, launched programs, grabbed fads, fired CEOs, and fired them yet again. Article headlines for A&P during the years of decline read, heralding the trumpet of change, awakening the giant, renewing A&P, and great expectations. The expectations were never realized. 1. Addressograph. Went into a Chicken Little, the sky is falling panic about the decline of its core business. Tried a quixotic, total corporate rejuvenation, throwing itself into the office automation field against IBM, Xerox, and Kodak. When this failed, the next CEO engineered a strategic flip-flop away from office automation. Then, like a brain surgeon vanishing from the operating room in the middle of an operation, that CEO resigned after less than a year. The next CEO does another 180-degree turn and buys his way into offset printing. It fails, the company takes a write-off. 4 CEOs in 6 years, leading up to 1984. Later, not 1, but 2 bankruptcies. 2. Bank of America. Went into a reactionary revolution mode in response to deregulation. Fell behind in ATMS and technology, then threw itself into an expensive catch-up program. Fell behind in California, then launched a crash program to catch up. Tried to pull off its own version of Mao's Cultural Revolution by hiring corporate change consultants who led corporate encounter groups and tried to institute a rah-rah approach to management. Lurched after Charles Schwab, culture clash erupted and later sold it back. Lurched after Security Pacific, trying to emulate Wells Fargo's Crocker merger, acquisition failed, creating a multi-billion-dollar write-off. 3. Bethlehem Steel. Vacillated back and forth, diversification, then focus on steel, then back to diversification, then back to steel. Fell behind in technology and modernization, then launched a crash program to catch up. Management reacted to the unions. Then unions reacted to management, then management reacted to unions, then unions reacted to management, and so on. Meanwhile, foreign competitors and Nuka snuck in from below to devour market share. 4. Eckerd. Fell into doom loop by making unrelated acquisitions in search of growth, but without any guiding hedgehog concept. Bought a candy company, a chain of department stores, a security service, and a food service supplier. In the biggest disaster, it bought American Home Video, lost $31 million, then sold it off to Tandy at $72 million below book value. Eckerd never fully recovered, got bought in a leveraged buyout, and later sold out to J.C. Penney. 5. Great Western Financial. Inconsistency of program. Would zig one way, trying to look more like a bank, then zag another way, trying to become a diversified firm. Into insurance, then later out of insurance. Into leasing and manufactured housing, then back to focus on finance and banking. Don't worry about what you call us, a bank, an S&L, or a zebra. Held together by the personal vision of the CEO, but when he retired, Great Western stumbled under its unwieldy, incoherent model, fell into reactionary restructuring, and sold out to Washington Mutual. 6. R.J. Reynolds. As RJR began to slip and found itself under siege from anti-tobacco forces, it reacted by throwing itself into ill-considered acquisitions, such as Sealand. It bought Sealand and poured over $2 billion into trying to make it work. All the while, its tobacco factories were falling apart from underinvestment, then sold it at a loss 5 years later. With each new CEO, it got a new strategy. Later, after losing its number 1 spot to Philip Morris, RJR threw itself into a leveraged buyout, designed primarily to enrich management rather than build the company. 7. Scott Paper. Fell into reactionary diversification, as its core business came under attack from Procter & Gamble and Kimberly-Clark. With each new CEO, Scott got a new road, a new direction, a new vision. With fanfare, Scott undertook radical change efforts in the late 1980s, but never answered the question, what can we be the best in the world at? Fell into restructuring mode. Hired Al Dunlap, known as Chainsaw Al, who cut 41% of the workforce in one fell swoop and then sold the company. 8. Silo. Vacuum left after death of Sidney Cooper. Next generation pursued growth for growth's sake. Whereas Circuit City would go into a region, build a distribution center, and fill every surrounding town with a store, Silo irrationally jumped from city to city, one store here, another store there, creating a totally unsystematic hodgepodge agglomeration of stores, with no regional economies of scale. Did not stick with a consistent concept or layout. Silo acquired by Cyclops, then Cyclops acquired by Dixons. Management fired by new owners. 9. Upjohn. Fell into a pattern of selling the future never looked brighter, and hyping the potential of new products. But results failed to match the hype. Upjohn stock became volatile and speculative, up and down again, as it sold the sizzle, but never delivered the steak. Later, like a gambler at Las Vegas, it threw its chips on savior products, such as Rogaine baldness cure. Persistent product problems, with Halcyon and others, exacerbated the swings. Eventually succumbed to restructuring disease and merged with Pharmacia. 10. Warner Lambert. Lurched back and forth, from consumer products to pharmaceuticals and healthcare, then back again, then both at the same time, then back to one, then back to the other. Each new CEO had a new vision, and new restructuring, stopping the momentum of his predecessor, and starting the flywheel back in another direction. Tried to ignite breakthrough with bold acquisitions, but failed and took hundreds of millions in write-offs. In the end, after years of inconsistent programs, it lurched into the arms of Pfizer, ending its turbulent existence as an independent company. 11. Unsustained comparisons. Burroughs. During its rise, Burroughs' CEO, a brilliant but abusive man, led a sweeping total re-engineering. Cost-cutting led to morale problems, which led to losing good people. Picked a weak successor. He failed and was replaced by a brilliant, brash, overly aggressive CEO who set a new direction, blaming the prior generation. Another massive reorganization, 400 executives leave in one purge. Posters adorned the walls, touting new programs. The company restructured again. Got yet another CEO, who tried yet another restructuring, another new direction. More decline, and then another CEO. 12. Chrysler. 5 years of stellar performance, then decline back into crisis. Like so many patients with a heart condition, we'd survived emergency surgery several years before only to revert to our old unhealthy lifestyle, wrote an insider. Diverted attention into Italian sports cars, corporate jet business, and defense. Revived in second turnaround in 1990s, but eventually sold out to Daimler. 13. Harris. Rose was the CEO who had a hedgehog concept in his head and who produced an initial flywheel effect. But he did not instill this concept into his executive team. Later, when he retired, executives replaced the hedgehog concept with a growth mantra. Harris lurched off into office automation, which proved to be a disaster, and then into a series of unrelated acquisitions. Fell into the sell the sizzle, but never deliver the steak syndrome. The flywheel came to a grinding halt. 14. Hasbro. Hasbro is the one comparison company that nearly got it all right. It built spectacular results by consistently pursuing the hedgehog concept of revitalizing classic toy brands, like G.I. Joe. Unfortunately, the architect of the initial transformation died unexpectedly at a young age. His successor appeared to be more a level 3, competent manager, than a level 5 leader. The flywheel slowed. The CEO reacted with restructuring and eventually hired an outsider to rebuild momentum. 15. Rubbermaid. If there ever was a company that skipped the build-up stage, it's Rubbermaid. Its transition CEO launched a complete restructuring of the company, a very dramatic and traumatic undertaking. Growth became the mantra, growth even at the expense of long-term momentum in the flywheel. When the CEO retired, it became clear that he was the primary force in the flywheel, not a strong team guided by a systematic hedgehog concept. The flywheel slowed, the company succumbed to restructuring disease and selling the future without delivering results. Rubbermaid fell from Fortune's #1 most admired to being acquired by Newell in just 5 years. 16. Teledyne. Teledyne rose and fell with the genius of one man, Henry Singleton, known as the Sphinx. The company's hedgehog concept was, in essence, follow Henry's brain. Singleton engineered over 100 acquisitions, in fields from electronics to exotic metals. The problems arose when Henry retired and took his brain with him. Teledyne fell into a downward spiral, eventually merging with Allegheny. 17. Appendix 8.b. Summary of acquisition analysis. Notes. The pagination of this electronic edition does not match the edition from which it was created. To locate a specific passage, please use the search feature of your ebook reader. Chapter 1. 1. Beryl Markham, West with the Night, San Francisco, North Point Press, 1983, 25. 2. Stock return calculations in this book were determined using data from the University of Chicago Center for Research in Security Prices, CRSP. Key definitions. Monthly total return, the total return to shareholders in a given month, including dividends reinvested, for an individual security. Cumulative stock return, the compounded value of $Y invested in an individual security between times T1 and T2, using the formula, $Y, math, 1 plus monthly total return at M1, times 1 plus monthly total return at M2, times 1 plus monthly total return at T2, where M1 equals end of the first month following T1, M2 equals end of the second month following T1, and so forth. General stock market, also called the general market, or just the market in NYSE or Amex or Nasdaq value-weighted return, which consists of the combined market value of all companies traded on these exchanges, including dividends reinvested, weighted by the capitalization of the company divided by the capitalization of the market. Cumulative return ratio to the market. At the end of any given time, this ratio is calculated as the cumulative return of $Y invested in the company divided by the cumulative return of $Y invested in the general stock market, where the $Y is invested in both the company and the market on the same date. Transition date. For good to great companies, the precise transition date for a good to great company is the date when the company's performance, in terms of cumulative stock returns relative to the general stock market, turns upward after a period of market to below market performance, and never again falls below this point. 3. Using University of Chicago Center for Research in Security Prices data, cumulative returns were calculated from December 31, 1984, to December 31, 1999, for GE and the general market, all dividends reinvested, adjusted for stock splits. 4. The chart on page 2 was created using the following methodology. 1. For each good to great company, invest $1 at the transition date, minus 15 years. Also invest $1 in the general market. Calculate the cumulative stock return of $1 invested at the transition date, minus 15 years through the transition date plus 15 years for the good to great company and the general market. In the case of CRSP data not being available, usually because the company was not yet publicly traded, merged, or was acquired, use market returns in lieu of company returns. 2. For each good to great company, calculate the ratio of cumulative stock returns to the general market from T15 to T plus 15 to create a ratio of cumulative returns curve. 3. Shift this ratio of cumulative returns curve for each good to great company such that at the transition date, the ratio of cumulative stock returns to the market equals precisely 1. This shifts the transition dates for all the good to great companies to a common reference point, time T. Do this by dividing the ratio of cumulative stock returns to the market at each month, calculated in step 2, from T15 to T plus 15, by the ratio of the cumulative stock return number calculated at precisely the transition date. 4. Use these shifted returns to calculate the average ratio of cumulative stock returns to the market across all 11 good to great companies at each month T15 to T plus 15. In other words, calculate the average of the calculation in step 3 at T15 across all 11 companies, then T15 plus 1 month for all 11 companies, plus 2 months and so forth, for all 360 months. This creates the combined cumulative returns relative to the market curve for the good to great companies. 5. For each direct comparison company, repeat steps 1 to 3 above, using the same dates for the direct comparison company as for its counterpart, good to great company. 6. For the direct comparison companies as a set, repeat step 4 above. 7. This chart shows the good to great companies versus the direct comparison companies, cumulative returns ratio to the market, T15 to T plus 15, with T as a common reference point where the ratio to the market is set to 1.0. The chart on page 4 was created using the following methodology. 1. For each good to great company, invest $1 on December 31, 1964, the date of the first transition in our study. 2. For each good to great company, calculate cumulative stock returns at the market rate of return through the transition date month, then switch over to using returns from the good to great company. For any missing CRSP data, usually because the company was not yet publicly traded, merged,